Hi, welcome to Parrot and Wolf. Today we're going to look at words and phrases in English that we can use to talk about law and crime at an intermediate and advanced level. The advanced listening exercise contains all the key information and arguments you need to discuss the law at a professional and academic level, so good luck. Now let's look at the first text for intermediate speakers. The most important thing to understand about the justice system is everyone is considered innocent until proven guilty, and everyone is equal in the eyes of the law. As soon as a crime is witnessed and reported, the police investigate the situation in order to decide whether an arrest is possible. If there's enough evidence or a strong enough motive, the suspect can be arrested and formally charged with the crime. During the investigation, as the police gather evidence, such as eyewitness accounts, DNA evidence and fingerprints, the suspect is remanded in custody to await a date to go to court and attend a trial, where they will be sentenced or acquitted. The suspect has the choice to pay bail, which allows them to be temporarily freed to await trial. Minor crimes are tried in a magistrate's court and consist of a magistrate but no jury. The magistrate makes a decision based on evidence and passes sentence. Serious or major crimes are tried in a Crown Court, which consist of a judge and sworn jury, prosecuting and defending barristers with their corresponding solicitors, and the defendant. After entering court, the defendant enters a plea of guilty or not guilty. The barristers argue the evidence and circumstances of the case in order to sway the jury and convince them that the defendant is guilty or innocent. They do this by questioning the witnesses summoned to court through a process called examination, cross-examination, and re-examination. After all the facts have been considered, the jury retires to deliberate. Once they've reached a unanimous decision about the defendant's guilt or innocence, they return and hand the verdict to the judge. The judge then reads the verdict and passes sentence corresponding to the crime, taking the specific circumstances into account. If the defendant is found innocent, they're acquitted and walk free. However, if they're found guilty and sentenced to a jail term, they must immediately be taken to prison and start serving their sentence. Convicted criminals serve their sentence until they are released on parole at a predetermined date. The most common crimes nationwide involve stealing, such as burglary, theft, robbery, and shoplifting. Violent crimes such as armed robbery, assault, manslaughter, and murder tend to be limited to inner cities rather than rural communities, and in any case are relatively uncommon. Conviction rates vary depending on the crime and how easy it is to gather evidence. Traditional white-collar crime has a higher acquittal rate than blue-collar crime, but this has no bearing on the severity of each individual offence. These days, some people choose to take the law into their own hands and try to capture criminals on their own without the police. These people are called vigilantes and cause more problems than they solve, but it's representative of the frustration and feeling of injustice people get when confronted with crime over sustained periods of time. Okay, so that's the intermediate text. Now let's look at the advanced text. Liberty and justice for all. A fundamental right that should be indiscriminately available and accessible to anyone. Indeed, without the rule of law, the human race would most likely revert to an every man for himself-like frontier attitude, resulting in the tearing of the fabric of society and the breakdown of civilization as we know it. Whatever keeps this indispensable and somewhat fragile structure in place undoubtedly deserves respect, stopping short of reverence, of course, lest we become enslaved to a pseudo-divine legal ideal that is unassailable. Perfection, as they say, is the enemy of progress. In the majority of developed nations, the umbrella term, the justice system, ordinarily describes the same sequence of events that occur as soon as a crime is reported or identified, or an accusation is made. The basic premise? To dispense justice in order to fairly punish and rehabilitate a wrongdoer who has broken the law, whilst simultaneously protecting society from further criminal activity. Miscarriages of justice aside, such as mistakenly incarcerating the innocent, the system works, as long as each defendant is tried by a judge or jury of their peers and each unanimous decision is beyond reasonable doubt. The police force and the courts do an incredible and almost insurmountable job of keeping the wheels of the justice system turning and protecting the public trust and its people. Under this stewardship, many individuals and organisations attempt to bend the law to their advantage, with the problem coming when bend turns to break. As there are tiered divisions in all aspects of society, so there are with criminals, the most definable being white and blue-collar crime. Favoured by the educated, privileged and professionally elite, White-collar crime such as libel, bribery, blackmail and fraud tends to be monetary and intellectual in nature, typically enjoying a softer spot in public opinion and stronger legal representation, therefore corresponding with a higher acquittal rate. It would be naive to assume otherwise. Blue-collar or physical crimes such as burglary, assault, arson and racketeering, on the other hand, typically represents the working class and is therefore much more prevalent, with the lion's share of magistrate and Crown Court convictions being of this ilk. Whether or not there is a bias towards convicting particular people based on discriminatory criteria and social status is yet to be seen. In many people's minds, it all comes back to, it's the best we've got. Perhaps, in order for mankind to progress and enlighten itself, the rule of law needs to be dynamic and interpretive, responding to an ever-changing world and a myriad of emerging influences day by day. In the pursuit of a perfect society, we may have to settle in the meantime for liberty and justice for most. These short excerpts are of course just the tip of the iceberg, as there are many different viewpoints to consider when discussing law and crime. However, the language in this introduction should give you an excellent head start, especially when essay writing and speaking. To find out more about learning English for Cambridge and IELTS exams, business and work, or general conversation, visit ParrotandWolf.com.